What if everything you've been told about money is wrong? Right now, a massive shift is happening in the global financial system. The US dollar, the world's dominant currency for the past 80 years, is losing its power. And this isn't some conspiracy theory. It's backed by actions from the most powerful financial institutions in the world. Here's the kicker. If you own silver, gold, or even US dollar-based assets like stocks, what's happening could explode your wealth by 10x or leave you scrambling, unprepared for the most significant monetary change in half a century. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why gold is hitting all-time highs, why silver is being deliberately suppressed, and how to position yourself before this global reset takes over. Stick around, because this is just the beginning. You might be thinking, how can the US dollar, the currency that runs the world, just lose its grip? Well, that's exactly the question you should be asking right now. While the mainstream media is distracted by the daily noise, central banks are making moves that will impact every single person on this planet. And this isn't a matter of if, it's already happening. You've heard about the global currency reset, but what does that really mean for you? The truth is, the financial system we've known for decades is crumbling from the inside out. While most of the world is focused on silver crashes and gold rallies, the real story is unfolding quietly behind closed doors. The dollar's dominance is slipping, and with it, trillions of dollars in wealth. Countries are moving away from the dollar, and central banks are hoarding gold at record levels. This is the beginning of the end for the dollar. And the question isn't just when it happens, it's how you're going to react when it does. So here's what you need to know. This isn't just a theory. It's a reality being shaped by the world's most powerful financial players. And if you're not paying attention, you could miss the biggest financial shift in your lifetime. Let's talk about the proof, because this isn't just talk. The evidence is piling up, and it's hard to ignore. First, let's look at gold. For months now, we've seen gold prices soar. Gold is reaching all-time highs, and it's not just a coincidence. Central banks are buying more gold than they have in decades. China, Russia, India, they're all aggressively building up their reserves. This isn't because they're speculating. This is preparation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Why are central banks buying so much gold? It's not because they think gold is just a shiny metal. It's because they're getting ready for a world where the US dollar is no longer the dominant global currency. When you understand that, everything starts to fall into place. Notice what's missing here. It's not just about investors buying gold. It's about nations and central banks stacking up on gold, preparing for a new system that doesn't revolve around the dollar. And while gold climbs, silver, an asset that many people like you and me hold, is being deliberately suppressed. But let's take it a step further. This isn't just happening in a vacuum. There's a deeper historical context here. If you look back, the last time we saw central banks buying gold this aggressively was back in 1967. What happened right after that? The Bretton Woods system collapsed, and the global financial order as we knew it shifted dramatically. Fast forward to today, the US dollar, once considered invincible, is now under attack from multiple angles. And here's where the tension builds. As gold climbs, silver is deliberately held down. In the middle of all this, you have the silver crash we saw not long ago. Silver prices shot up to nearly $84 per ounce in late December, only to be knocked down by the CME raising margin requirements. So why suppress silver while gold is allowed to rise? Gold benefits institutions, governments, and central banks. But silver is different. It's held by you and me, the retail investors. When silver skyrockets, it sends a signal to the masses that the system is on the brink. Central banks don't want the public catching on too early, which is why they're keeping silver prices down. They don't want us getting ahead of the curve. Now, here's where it gets serious. As silver prices are manipulated on paper, physical silver is in massive demand, particularly in Asia. The physical market is paying $35 above the paper price, signaling real desperate demand. The paper market says silver is crashing, but the physical market, it's saying the exact opposite. There's a huge disconnect happening right now, and it's part of a bigger global reset that's already underway. Now let's get to the real kicker. While the paper market says silver is crashing, the actions of the world's most powerful financial institutions tell a completely different story. Central banks are quietly moving away from the US dollar, and they're building up their reserves of gold and other hard assets. But that's not all. we've seen the U.S. dollar's share of global reserves drop significantly, from 65% in 2008 to just 58% in 2024. That's a $1 trillion shift. Countries like China, Russia, and India are diversifying away from the dollar. And here's where it gets even more shocking. These countries aren't just holding more gold, they're repatriating their gold reserves, bringing them back from U.S. and U.K. vaults. Germany, Turkey, Venezuela, these countries are taking their gold back. And that's a huge red flag. When countries start pulling their gold out of the U.S., you know something is off. The U.S. has been the safekeeper of gold for decades. But now, nations are realizing that their gold isn't really theirs. It could be seized at any time. The question is, what happens next? The U.S. has made it clear that they're not going to sit back and let this happen quietly. Countries are bypassing the dollar for international trade, and they're working on alternative payment systems to avoid the dollar entirely. China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, these countries are already trading oil without using the U.S. dollar. And the BRICS countries are developing their own alternative to the SWIFT system, which has been the backbone of international bank transfers for decades. All of this is happening right now, under the radar. And when these systems go live, they'll chip away at the dollar's dominance, weakening its grip on global trade and finance. Now, as this system starts to crack, things are escalating quickly. We're seeing a rapid chain reaction. Countries are dumping their U.S. dollars, replacing them with hard assets like gold. They're building alternative payment systems. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Just think about it. China and Russia have already begun bypassing the dollar for oil trades. India is doing the same. And Saudi Arabia, a longtime U.S. ally, is now discussing trading oil in Chinese currency. The writing is on the wall, and it's clear. The dollar is losing its edge. On top of that, the BRICS nations are preparing to launch their own gold-backed currency in 2026. This currency is set to challenge the dollar's dominance and could shift the balance of global power in ways we've never seen before. These countries control nearly half of the world's gold production, and they're positioning themselves for a world where the dollar no longer reigns supreme. So what happens if this continues? What happens when the world decides the U.S. dollar isn't the safe haven it once was? The answer is a massive global reset, a shift so big it will change the way we think about money, trade, and global power. And if you're not paying attention, you'll be left in the dust. Now that we've covered the immediate effects, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Why is this happening? What's driving this global shift? It's not just the actions of central banks and governments. There's a deeper system at play. The reason the dollar is losing its dominance comes down to one simple thing: trust. For decades, the U.S. dollar has been the world's reserve currency because the world trusted the United States, its economy, its military, its financial system. But that trust is eroding as the U.S. continues to print more money, inflate its debt, and undermine the value of the dollar. That trust is slowly being replaced with fear. But here's where it gets unsettling. This isn't just a matter of losing trust in the U.S. It's the entire global financial system that's starting to fall apart. The global reserve currency system was built on the idea that the U.S. would always back its currency with something solid, like gold. But after Nixon took us off the gold standard, that promise was broken. And now the world is scrambling to find a new system that doesn't rely on a single country or currency. The real kicker? This shift is being enabled by a carefully orchestrated series of moves, from central banks hoarding gold to nations working on alternative currencies. This isn't just an accident. It's a calculated move to destabilize the dollar and shift the balance of global power. So, where does all of this lead? What happens next? The truth is, we're standing at a crossroads. There are two possible futures ahead of us, and the path we take will depend on what happens in the next few years. On one hand, we could see a gradual transition to a multi-currency world. The BRICS nations' gold-backed currency could gain traction, weakening the U.S. dollar's dominance and creating a more diversified global monetary system. This would likely result in a major shift in the way global trade is conducted, with countries increasingly moving away from the dollar and into other currencies. Gold would continue to rise, and silver could follow suit as it breaks free from its artificial suppression. On the other hand, if If the U.S. and its allies continue to fight back and try to maintain the dollar's position, we could see escalating tensions, both economically and geopolitically. Countries might be forced to pick sides, and we could see an even more fragmented financial system, with regions going into competition over who controls the global reserve currency. In this scenario, the chaos would likely create an even greater opportunity for gold and silver, but the uncertainty and volatility could be devastating for many. One thing is for sure, the global financial system is changing. The only question now is how quickly it will happen and how prepared we are for it when it does. Here's the deep truth. This reset isn't just a prediction. It's a process already unfolding. If you're still unsure about what's coming, just look at the moves being made by central banks, nations, and financial institutions. They're acting as if they know something we don't, and the evidence is right in front of us. This is bigger than gold or silver. This is about the entire financial system and whether or not you're ready to face it. The monetary reset is already happening, and by the time it fully plays out, it could be too late to act. The U.S. dollar, once the king of global currencies, is no longer as untouchable as it used to be. And the next chapter in this story is about to unfold. The real question now is, will you be among those who are prepared to benefit from it, or will you be caught off guard, watching as the world's financial landscape shifts under your feet? If you want to stay ahead of the curve, make sure you're following and subscribing. We'll continue to break down this massive story as it evolves, and we'll show you how to position yourself to thrive in the coming years. Stay informed, stay prepared. The future of money is changing, and it's happening now.